The US has announced new sanctions against Russia for what the White House says is the Kremlin's election interference and cyber attacks. The measures include wider restrictions on US banks trading in Russian debt and the expulsion of 10 diplomats. In Brussels, NATO announced that it supports any US actions to contain Russia's destabilizing activities. Russia's foreign ministry says that a response to the sanctions is inevitable, and it summoned the US ambassador in Moscow. More now from Russia shortly, but first here's our State Department correspondent Rosalind Jordan in Washington.
This is, of course, with the expulsion of 10 diplomats assigned to the embassy here in Washington. That certainly is going to get the headlines. But this is also a matter of the Biden administration's efforts to hold Moscow accountable for things such as allegedly paying bounties for enemy combatants to target U.S. forces in Afghanistan. This also is a matter of trying to hobble Moscow's ability to pay for its operations by forbidding U.S. Financial institutions from doing any business that uses the Russian ruble as the basis of the transaction from mid-June. And that's a considerable financial penalty because it sharply limits Moscow's ability to do business in international monetary markets. There's also the call for more concern about Alexei Navalny, the opposition figure who is said to be in declining health in a Russian prison. And you're seeing more efforts being launched against the government for its ongoing punishment and persecution of Alexei Navalny. And there's also financial penalties and sanctions for those involved in the SolarWinds cyber attack against U.S. computer networks.
Live now to Al Jazeera's Bernard Smith, who's in Moscow. What else have the Russians been saying about this, Bernard?
Well, in the last few minutes, Adrian, Maria Zakharova, the foreign ministry spokeswoman here in Moscow, in her weekly weekly audience with the press, she said that the sanctions the US have announced do not meet the interests of two nuclear powers. The actions show the opposite tone to the phone call made between President Biden, who initiated that phone call on Tuesday night, and Vladimir Putin. She says that the sanctions are baseless in substance and senseless in form, and our response is inevitable. It's coming, she says. The US ambassador's already been summoned to the foreign ministry. He's apparently there, they say, and the foreign ministry spokeswoman says he won't be getting an easy ride. But the issue is that the US has a long list of complaints that you heard Rosalind refer to there against Russia about SolarWinds hack that targeted 9 federal organizations in the US plus 100 companies, the biggest and most sophisticated cyber attack the world's ever seen, according to Microsoft. It refers to the continued occupation of Crimea and the repression in Crimea and the jailing of Alexander Navalny. So all of that long list of complaints is why the US says it's now taken this action.
So what, if any, economic impacts are likely from these new sanctions, Bernard?
Well, one interesting indicator is that before the detail of these sanctions were announced, the Russian ruble dropped in value against the dollar. But after the sanctions were announced, the ruble regained what it had lost against the dollar. And this is because although the US is stopping the buying of Russian debt on the primary bonds market, you'll still be able to buy it on the secondary market. That means that someone else another country or another organization that buys that debt, Russia will still be able to buy it. People will still be able to buy Russian debt on the secondary market. So the economic effect is not as significant as the markets first feared. But there are effects, of course, on those individuals and those companies that have been sanctioned.
Al Jazeera's Bernard Smith reporting live there from Moscow. Bernard, many thanks indeed.